couple seconds here to get started. Thanks for joining us. I am going to wait for one of our monitors to indicate we are live on YouTube in our panelist chat, and then we will get started. Okay, think we can go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment's special unemployment insurance town hall, specifically for our federal workers. We have a lot of content to share with you today and a number of experts joining us to dig into your questions. We also received a number of questions beforehand, which we will address in our Q&A section. You will also have an opportunity to ask live questions of our panelists. Today's webinar will be recorded and shared out afterward. We're also live streaming on YouTube. If you do have a question, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A. And if you are following us on YouTube, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. In addition, we do have an ASL interpreter joining us. If you require ASL interpretation, please navigate to the interpreter, click on the three dots, and then pin the interpreter so they are at the top of your screen. I'm Cher Haven, Deputy Executive Director for the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Joining me today is Phil Spessart, the Unemployment Insurance Division Director, and Jeff Newcomb, who is our branch chief in unemployment insurance, overseeing, among other things, our claims processing teams. And again, we have a number of experts joining us here today. So today we will go over just some basics about unemployment insurance, touch on eligibility, who can apply. We'll go through the claim process. We'll discuss unemployment resources, reemployment support, should that be something that you're interested in. And then most importantly, we'll get to your questions. So real quick about unemployment insurance in Colorado, UI benefits can last up to 26 weeks. They are around 55% of wages, partial wage replacement. Employers may not prohibit a worker for filing for UI under any circumstances. Does not mean a worker will be determined eligible, but your employer may not restrict you from applying. Benefits are generally paid within 4 to 6 weeks. Each claim has to be adjudicated. Each separation is different. Each claim is different, and that does require sometimes some more in-depth adjudication. And employers actually pay unemployment insurance. The federal government is what we call a reimbursable employer, and that just means that they reimburse the state for those benefits. Okay, so as I said regarding eligibility, you may or may not be determined eligible. It's an eligibility program, not an entitlement program. And here are some things that determine your eligibility. You must have earned $2,500 in wages during what we call the base period. That's essentially the last 4 of the 5 completed quarters or the last 18 months. You should have lost your job through no fault of your own. Generally, there are always some exceptions, but generally you've lost your job through no fault of your own. You should be able, available, and actively seeking work with some exceptions, especially with our federal workers who are now furloughed. So we'll speak to that. Furloughed is essentially your job attached. So your employer has the intent of calling you back into work. And so when we look at our federal workers who are furloughed, we'll walk you through the system and how you can tell us that you're actually furloughed or job attached. That is very important to know for federal workers who are furloughed because we have a special team working those claims. Normally with unemployment insurance, you do have to conduct a valid work search. Again, there is an exception on this for furloughed workers. You also do need to certify or request payment every week. Should you fail to certify, the system may interpret that as you have returned to work. So it really is important for you to keep your claim open by certifying every week. And for our federal employees, make sure you file in the correct state. We'll talk about this. This is the location of your last duty station on your SF50. So who can apply for UI? As I said, anyone. Your employer may not prohibit you from filing for unemployment insurance. Again, however, we do look at all of the reasons for separation in determining your eligibility. Who should file in Colorado? So if your last duty station is listed in Colorado, file in Colorado. If you have had employment since being laid off from the federal government, if you are in fact laid off and not furloughed, you will need to file in the state of that employment. Again, it's really important to note the correct duty station because that determines in which state you should file your claim. Let's see. File right away after your last day of work. Please don't file before your last day of work. If you believe you will be separated at some point, I would suggest getting all of the necessary documents gathered to prepare to file. But unfortunately, you should wait till the last day after your last day of employment. It really does you no good to file early. We won't be able to process that claim. And again, furloughed workers are in a different scenario, and we'll talk definitely at length about that as we go through today's webinar. And with that, I'm turning it over to my colleague, Phil.
All right. Thank you, Cher, and thank you for joining us. So again, as Cher said earlier on, there's a lot of information we're going over today. So a lot of you are going to be watching this right now. A lot of you are kind of concerned, frustrated at this point with what you're dealing with. We encourage you to remember we're actually recording today's webinar, so this information will also be available to you later on. But for our federal workers and various federal worker scenarios, in particular, if you have been furloughed, in other words, you're not working right now because of the shutdown, what you want to do when you're filing on MyUI Plus, and the best way to file for us is on MyUI Plus. And if you're doing that online, you'll need to go through ID.me so that you can obtain your login, and that'll do your identity verification. But make sure that once you're in, you check the box that says you are out of work due to the shutdown, and then check the layoff box. The next thing we want you to do is there is a return to work box. You want to say, yes, you are scheduled to return to work. We understand for some of you, this might have been confusing if you've already filed, because it also asks you to provide a definite return to work date. And some of you may not have understood that or had no definite return to work date because, again, you're on this furlough and you have no idea how long it is. At this point, we're asking you to pick January 5th of 2026 to load this in so that'll allow you to become job attached. That will remove any requirement that you have to be out actively seeking work during that period of time. Again, if you want to actively seek work, we're not going to prevent you from it, but it removes that requirement that you have to do it. We know that there are some of you who may have been confused on that, clicked the furlough button, but never got to the process where you job attached yourself. We are running some scripts on the back end to find those individuals so that we can clear those, provide the job attachment, and to the extent that you may have had a week that you were asked, did you seek work? And you said no, and you've been denied for that. We are working to change those decisions. We are trying to make that as simple as possible so you do not have to try to call us at a time that other people may be trying to call us to file unemployment insurance claims. So again, if that was the issue, we will again be searching for those and try to do those proactively. If you receive back pay, when you go back to work on the furlough, which is the federal law that requires it, despite certain conversations that may have occurred. If you receive that, you will have to pay back your unemployment benefits when you get that back pay from the federal government. And so then you'll need to be contacting us to work out how you would repay those benefits. Now, if you were furloughed and then laid off, because some of you were furloughed and then received notice, now you're laid off. If you already filed your unemployment insurance claim when you're furloughed, Now you'll need to report that new separation on your weekly certification when you're trying to get paid benefits. If you're just now starting your claim after being laid off, check the box that says you were out of work due to shutdown, then select the layoff option, but answer no to the return to work date question, because this means since you're laid off permanently, you will need to start searching for work in order to receive benefits. If you left or were laid off before the shutdown, do not check the box that says you were laid off due to the shutdown, and answer the questions based on the circumstances of your separation, including whether you got severance pay. As an example here, if you were one of the fork in the road email people who accepted that, you would go through that process. You would mark the quit box, but then you would provide full explanations of why you quit, why you accepted that fork in the road offer at this point in time. All right, so we're going to go through understanding part of the claim process. So again, as I mentioned earlier, file your claim in MyUI Plus. That's usually the most effective, most expedient way to file it. You'll be required to verify your identity with ID.me first. When you have to go through ID.me, it wants to be able to access your camera. The reason for this is obviously it has to be able to look at a photo of you comparing certain selfies. So you'll need to give ID.me some access to your camera for that point in time. On your claim, make sure you add your email address, add an email address that you use and check regularly and often, and then sign up for text notifications, because when there are things sitting there for you to do, we will send you a text notification that you need to go in and log into MyUI Plus to handle that. We will not send you anything that has a direct link in it. So if somehow you receive a text or an email that has a direct link and says, click on this, you would ignore that. That could possibly be from a fraudster. Anytime you think you have something that's suspicious, log into your MyUI Plus account the way you would always log into your MyUI Plus account, not clicking on any links. When you file your claim, please report your wages and any separation pay. This is very important on your federal claims that you're filing, and then describe the circumstances of the separation. Again, as I've told you to sign up for the text notifications and email addresses, we want you to respond ASAP to any follow-up questionnaires. The quicker you respond, the quicker we can process the unemployment insurance claim, because sometimes when you respond, we have to go back to the employer for yet additional information. So the quicker you're doing that, the quicker we can meet this process. Make sure you're meeting all those eligibility requirements. In other words, you're able and available for work. If you're required to seek work, you're actively seeking work, and understand that decisions are generally made within 4 to 6 weeks as to whether you're entitled to benefits and will be receiving benefits. This is why Cher mentioned early on, don't wait to file your claim if you were out of work. File your claim immediately so that it can be processing during that period of time. In other words, don't necessarily be waiting until you're out of money and saying, I need to file now. Have some money that's going to cover some of those bills in the meantime. Make sure, very important here, you request payment and maintain your eligibility every week. So this is what we call weekly certifications, where you're going to tell us what you did the preceding week at the end of each week. Recommended that you do that every Sunday. And so if you mark that on your calendar, it becomes easy not to forget to do that on Sundays. If you forget to do it for more than a week period, your unemployment insurance claim is going to close down. You will have to reopen your claim, and you will potentially lose the ability to collect for some of that back period of time. So just consider that as if you were on the job and required to punch a time clock, right? You're going to keep track of what you were doing during that week for us. And then very important here, disable pop-up blockers when you are in MyUI Plus so you can see claim documents. There will be documents that are sent to you or decisions sent to you. If your pop-up blocker is on, you won't be able to see it. Again, we're going to tell you just to disable it while you are on MyUI Plus. Having pop-up blockers on is actually normally a best practice. All right, so things you should know about the fact-finding process and adjudication is, as much as each one of you might want to ask us, hey, if I do X, what will happen? We're usually unable to give you an exact answer. And the reason for that is because every claim, no matter how much you think the claims are identical, they're all unique. And so we need to do our due diligence to make sure that an individual is eligible for benefits. So there is no set of facts that are identical in 100% of cases and claims. And so thus the decisions that are received are based on all those facts that we obtain. Your claim will have a number of issues that will need to be investigated. So it usually won't just be one. For example, there may be, we need to find wages, we need to look at the reason you're unemployed, and we need to verify your identity. We will reach out to both you and the employer on those issues related to your separation and any kind of payments. If we ask you for a response, again, I'm going to reiterate, do so by the deadline on the questionnaire. I would recommend, if you got that today, complete it today and send it back in, because you're speeding up the processing there. If you don't respond, we end up making a decision based only on the information that we have. And that could be something from the employer that is potentially detrimental to your ability to receive unemployment insurance benefits. You will receive a determination on each and every one of those issues. And this is why we want you to make sure you turn those pop-up blockers off, because that'll tell you how much and whether you are getting paid. If you have a decision that denies you benefits, you have the right to appeal, and you would need to do so within the time frame stated on that letter, and there are instructions provided there. You can actually file appeals online through MyUI Plus. All right, unemployment compensation for federal employees, because this is mostly what all of you are on here, is federal employees. There is a huge difference in how regular unemployment claims work and federal claims work. Regular unemployment claims for state employers, for private employers in the state, those employers report wages to us every quarter. The federal government does not. The federal government only reports wages at a time a claim is filed and after we have requested those wages. So we need the wage information to help determine your eligibility for benefits. We can get this information from you when you're filing your claim. So we are going to ask you to submit proof of those wages. We will send you something that's known as an ES 935 form. It's sort of contains your affidavit for wages and separation information. Please fill that out completely and immediately. That will initially have no wages listed. You're going to add wages, and then you are going to return it to us. We have contacts available through OMB about individuals at very specific agencies who are going to be available during the furlough to provide information related to separations and wages. However, again, if they do not respond timely and we have that affidavit from you that this is accurate related to wages, we can utilize those wages to input on your claim to start getting you paid rather than having it hold up. So if you don't complete the 935, and we don't get anything from the employer, your claim is going to be stuck in a process because we have no idea what wages to add to it at that point in time. We would also normally tell you, make sure you have an SF8, SF50. Not all of you will have that. So as long as you have some pay stubs that you can provide where we can ensure that we have the proper agency that we are reaching out to, and sometimes that will help you with, as Cher discussed early on, duty station. In today's world of remote work, some of you may be working in Colorado and doing all your work in Colorado, but your duty station may be in some other state. If your duty station is in some other state, then that's actually where you're supposed to be filing, because that is where wages are assignable. So again, we'll go over this just quickly. You may have received an SF8 for you. It gives you the correct agency name and address to send your wage request to. You may also have an SF50, which is wage and separation information. We may need to determine your benefit amount. It also lists your duty station. So you may need to submit additional proof of wages if you don't have that SF50, as we talked about here. So again, that's where we would ask for some kind of pay stubs or anything else you would have. If you were a probationary employee with the federal government, you are potentially going to have a mixed wage claim. So in other words, you may have some regular private employment claim. And so initially it show no wages for the federal government, and then we would add those wages for the federal government. We will look at all those wages in that base period to determine the ultimate value of your unemployment insurance claim. And we will process the claim based on separations from each and every one of those employers, meaning you may receive the full amount that you think is available. You may receive a lesser amount based on those reasons for separating from other employers. All right, and now, because we want to make sure that Mr. Newcomb gets to speak with all of you, I'm going to hand this over to Jeff Newcomb for the next series of slides.
Good afternoon, everybody. So the next step I'm going to talk about is what happens if you are approved for benefits and what you should do. So you need to make sure that you're filing your certification, or otherwise known as payment request, every week for any week that you need to get paid. You can do that starting on the Sunday following the week. And we recommend that you put that in right on Sunday each week. Set yourself a reminder to go ahead and do that. You can do that through MyUI Plus. You won't need to do an active work search for every week that you are requesting if you are required to do so. So that would apply to anybody that may have been RIFed or was in the fork in the road section and are not on the current active furlough. If you are furlough and expect to return to work, you're not required to return back to work, or you're not required to do an active work search. You need to be able and available to work. That means that you need to be physically able to work and be available to work at any time. So if you're expecting to return, you have to be able to return right back to work when called. You need to report any earnings that you have during the week, and that does include earnings that you get from gig work. So if you're doing gig work on the side to get by, you do need to report those. You can earn up to 50% of your benefit payment without it impacting your UI benefits. And please be sure to quickly respond to any additional information requests that we send you. So you'll need to make sure that you're checking your correspondence folder, checking your claim status in MyUI Plus on a regular basis. And again, can't stress enough to make sure that you have pop-up blockers disabled on your browser so that you can see the actual fact-finding questionnaires as they pop up and read the correspondence that's in your correspondence folder. We've had several questions about back pay and how you repay your UI benefits. So first, federal law requires back pay for the time that you were furloughed, according to the Federal Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019. So it is required by law that you receive back pay. If you received UI benefits and then you get your back pay, you'll need to repay those UI benefits. So once you receive your back pay, you can call us. The Benefit Payment Control Unit is the one that will handle that. Their phone number is 303-318-9035 or toll free at 1-877-464-4622. And then the folks with the BPC team are going to walk you through the process of reporting that back pay and set up payment plans if you need to and work with you to arrange the repayment of those. And managing your claim in MyUI Plus. So in MyUI Plus, which is available through our website, you can click on Manage My Claim. You can also click on File Your Claim if you haven't done so yet to get that started. In MyUI Plus, you'll do your weekly certifications, which are your payment requests. You'll respond to any fact-finding questionnaires that we may send you. Check your claim status. You can update your account information. If your claim went inactive, you can reopen your claim. You can access your 1099-G when those are sent out in January. You can upload documents into the fact finding, and you can view claim decisions and other correspondence. And again, be sure to turn off any pop-up blockers on your browser to make sure that those present to you.
Thanks, Jeff. So we know most of our furloughed workers joining us will be returning to their positions. But for those of you who were laid off here, we've gathered just a list of resources available to assist you in your reemployment goals. Connecting Colorado, you do need to register with Connecting Colorado for your UI eligibility. But as a bonus, Connecting Colorado also has a lot of jobs available. Some are remote work jobs, some are within the state, over 100,000 job openings. So certainly a viable resource for you as you are pursuing your reemployment goals. Rapid response. This is locally delivered services that will help you navigate the UI process, although I think our experts today have done an amazing job explaining what to expect in the process. There are also workforce centers throughout the state that can provide you with in-person or virtual reemployment support that includes job search assistance, resume writing support, interview tips and techniques, a lot of resources available there. Also hiring events across the state. Also in the slides, which we will be sharing out, by the way, after today's webinar, a link to apprenticeship programs. Civic Match is actually not part of the state. It's a nonprofit that will connect public sector government workers with similarly situated government work available nationally. So with that, we are actually going to turn to some questions that were submitted to us in advance. Please do keep chatting in your questions. Brandon and others are furiously typing responses. If you do have something specific to your claim, we will be privately messaging you to get more information on your claim to see if we can support you with that. So with that, Phil, we're going to go through a few slides with some of the questions that were provided to us beforehand. We've addressed this already, but should I wait to apply for benefits until I run out of money?
Right. And we did cover it earlier, but again, it's important to repeat it. No, don't wait, right? Because it takes us that period of time to process an unemployment claim. So you should always apply for unemployment right away after your last day of work. If you wait to file, you may not be able to get benefits for the weeks that you were out of work also and didn't apply. So in other words, this is allowing you from that very point you were laid off to potentially receive unemployment benefits.
Absolutely. If they receive unemployment and have taxes taken out, when they go to repay the UI, do they pay the full amount, including the taxes, or only pay back the amount they received? This is a very complicated scenario.
Yes, and it's a good question, right? Because people have those taxes taken out and think, oh, I only need to pay you back the net. You actually need to pay the division back the gross amount of those payments, the full gross. So as an example, just using a random figure here, let's say the gross amount on your claim was supposed to be $100 a week. You were only receiving 90 some odd dollars because you had taxes taken out. You would pay us back the full $100 for each of those weeks. You will receive your 1099 form at the end of the year, end of the tax year, and you would include it in your taxes and following in January. So if that results in a return on taxes, that is where that would happen, is off of the IRS in your 1040.
Thank you, Phil. And we also discussed this earlier, but what happens if they are not conducting a valid work search?
Sure. And this is going to depend, right? If you are furloughed, you are considered to be job attached. Again, we know some of you may have missed that, so we're trying to fix that for those of you to prevent having to have all of you called back in or calling back in to get that fixed. So if you were furloughed, you're not required to seek work. We're not going to prevent you from seeking work if you so desire to. It's just you're not required to. If you were part of that reduction in force, in other words, permanently laid off, if you separated through fork in the road or any of those other things, you are not job attached and you are required to search for work every week. And you provide us information related to your job search each week on Sundays when you are completing those weekly certifications to keep your claim active and moving.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, if they took the voluntary separation agreement, can they still receive unemployment insurance?
These are always fun because this gets down to that. If this, can I get this? And then this is where we've told you a little earlier. It's going to depend based on the unique circumstances of your separation. You can still file for unemployment. That is your right. But the reason for your separation and other factors will help determine if you're eligible for benefits. This is where we send all that fact finding back and forth to you and the employer. And then based on all the facts obtained, we will issue a decision that ultimately either says you're awarded benefits or you denied benefits. Part of that fact finding process is if you have copies of letters or agreements that you received that led you to say, I'm going to participate in something, we would ask you to upload those so that those can be considered in your case. We may know that those letters exist, but we have to treat every case separately. And so it can be done only on what is provided within that case itself. So if you have those letters, save them and obviously input them and then tell us why you took advantage of that program.
And if they believe they were fired illegally, can they still file for UI?
Yeah, regardless of whether you believe you were fired illegally or the one above also talks about performance reasons. If you were discharged for any reason, you can still file for unemployment. If you disagree with the reason that you were let go, you would describe that in the application. So whether it was performance issues or you believed you were fired illegally, you're going to describe those specific incidents there and the specific circumstances surrounding your separation. And then we would also encourage you, if you had performance reviews, let's say you had positive performance reviews and they discharge you for performance, upload those positive performance reviews. And then if you believe you were fired illegally, anything else you think might assist in you establishing to us and proving to us that you may have been fired illegally, we would ask you to upload those too.
This is our last slide, and we are actually going to read aloud some of the questions that have been typed into the Q&A. So if you've not yet received a response, it's likely coming. So 2 more pre-submitted questions, Phil. I filed for UI, but was turned down. What happened?
Right. So again, I'm going to remind you, every claim is unique. And so we look at the circumstances of your separation. You should have received a determination that explained why you were found ineligible or not entitled to benefits. This is where we're talking about pop-up blockers. So if all you know is that money was reduced on your claim and you have no understanding why, we need to have to where you're turning off those pop-up blockers and looking at correspondence sent to you. If it's been long enough, you may actually need to contact our call center so that they can assist you and walk you through doing that. If you have a decision that denied you benefits, you have the right to appeal those decisions. And we would always recommend that you appeal a decision. You may think this is a lost cause because we told you no. If you appeal a decision, the worst thing that can happen for you is it continues to be a no. The best thing that can happen to you is it changes to a yes at that point in time. So you essentially do not have anything to lose by submitting an appeal. I always encourage you to appeal any decision where you were denied.
And lastly, I haven't been laid off, but is there anything I should do to prepare just in case?
Yeah, gather all kinds of paperwork. Make sure you're aware of where your duty station is. I think we'll see a lot of things where people, again, think their duty station is someplace particular and may find out a little bit differently. So make sure you're gathering any kind of proof of your wages. Figure out what state to file your claim in based on that duty station. And then if you are let go, immediately request your SF8 or SF50, because that SF8 and that SF50 are only going to assist you with filing your claim and speeding up the processing. Again, if you don't get those 2 forms, don't hold off to file, still file, but this is why we're telling you, get some of that other information ahead of time so you already know what that is, what the proper agency is. So as an example, some of you may think that you work for Department of Army, but then if you got an SF8 or SF50, you find out it's really Department of Defense and a sub-listing on there. So it's important to know the exact agency that you work for also.
Okay, so we're going to, I think our last slide includes resources available, links that, again, that will be in the slides that we send out. And I know we have a lot of questions. We cannot unmute participants, but so if you can please continue to use the Q&A. Brandon is a one-man operation right now. So hopefully now that Phil, Jeff, and I are done speaking, we can assist answering some questions. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to help us moderate some of the questions that are coming in.
Thanks, Cher. Our first question, we've gotten a few along these same lines. The question is, what happens if I don't have 18 months worth of pay stubs? Can I just submit 12 months or whatever they have access to? Jeff, can you answer that, please?
Yeah, I would submit whatever you have access to. Again, we are trying to work with the agencies to verify wages, and I understand many of you only have access to 12 months or may not have access to your portal to actually pull the information together. So do your best to summarize what on your ES-935 form, what you do know, and if you and provide us any pay stubs that you do have available, and we'll do our best to get that worked out as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Jeff. Another common theme that we've gotten is folks are not seeing the ability to do their weekly claims yet. What advice do you have for those folks?
So there are 2 different scenarios that you may fall into if you don't see the buttons on your homepage to request payments. The first is if we don't have your wages loaded into the system yet, it will not show that option. As soon as we do load wages into your claim and you get the monetary determination, it will populate all of the weeks for you to file, and you just do them one at a time in chronological order as soon as that's available to you. The other thing is if you did have your wages added, but you forgot to file your weekly payment request, it will make your claim go inactive. And so you've got a couple of options there. You can either contact us at our call center to have your claim reopened, or you can reopen the claim yourself. There will be an option on the left-hand navigation in MyUI Plus that says reopen claim, and it will walk you through the steps to get your claim reactivated.
Thanks, Jeff. A question here from Isabel. She is asking, what happens if they've received some payment, partial wages, not full, for work prior to October 1st? Would that disqualify them from receiving any UI for the upcoming reporting period?
So you have to report wages in the week in which they are earned, not received. So if the wages were earned prior to October 1st, so you actually worked prior to that, but you weren't paid until later, you don't need to report those earnings within the subsequent payment periods.
Thanks, Jeff. We've also gotten a few questions about uploading documents, specifically the ES 935. Can you just go over some tips for folks in terms of uploading those documents and getting those documents to us?
So my understanding is to upload those, and Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, as part of that fact-finding questionnaire that you receive within MyUI Plus related to the issue itself, there should be an option to upload documents. I'm going to take an action item and work with our folks to get a tutorial or some specific instructions because we have received several questions about this. If you're having trouble with it and absolutely cannot figure it out, you can fax those documents to us as well. The phone number for our fax is 303-318-9014. So if you're struggling with it, you can either contact our customer support center and ask for instructions with somebody live on the phone, or fax that information or fax your documents to us at that phone number.
Thanks, Jeff. Phil, can you answer this question? I believe you covered this earlier, but the question is, if we're furloughed and end up not receiving back pay, do we still need to pay back the benefits?
Now, if you are furloughed and if the government for some reason fails to abide by that 2019 federal law, you would not be required to repay those unemployment insurance benefits. You're only required to repay those at the time that you receive or once you receive that back pay award. So again, it's not I'm afraid to file right now because they've said they may not pay and I may owe back. If you don't get the back pay award, there's nothing to pay back to us.
Thanks, Phil. A question here from Lori. She was furloughed and she says she's made a mistake on her claim. Is the best way for her to fix that by calling in to fix it? Or is there another way that she can self-serve?
You should be able to call in to fix it. That's going to be the easiest option for you. Depending on the mistake you made, if it's something related to your job separation, our team that works on the federal claims will contact you and submit supplemental fact finding to get the information that you need and have that corrected. Otherwise, if it's something like you messed up on your address, any of your demographic information, you should be able to do that through self-service in MyUI Plus. I would recommend, just depending, not knowing the specifics, give us a call and we'll guide you through fixing anything that needs to be corrected on the claim.
Thanks, Jeff. A tax question here from Catherine. Can we change our withholding preference after submitting their claim?
Yep. So Colorado law lets you change the tax preference one time during the life of your claim, and you should be able to do that through self-service in MyUI Plus.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jessica, I think if Brandon does want to answer some of those questions that he's flagged, let's go ahead and give Jeff a break and let Brandon speak to any of those questions he has identified. If you want to navigate to one of those questions. I can read it, Jessica, or you can read to one of the ones Brandon's indicated he wants to answer.
I can go for it. Brandon, if you're ready to give you some time, I'm going to ask a question here from Janine. Given the information provided today, I realize I made an error now that I submitted my claim initially. How can I edit and correct this? Jeff just answered that one. So go ahead and give us a call, Janine. Uh, lots of
Jessica,
reading.
real quick, if that
Yeah.
I'm thinking that a lot of folks were thrown by the definite return to work period. So if it's related to job attachment and that's the mistake that you made, again, you do not need to call us. We are going to proactively go through and make corrections on those for you.
Thank you, Jeff. Trying to find some new topics here.
Hi, Jessica. Can I just answer? Hi, Jessica. Can I just answer one
Yeah,
kind of?
go for it, Brandon.
So one common question that we keep getting is that people are selecting their duty station as Colorado when they file their claim, but when they get their ES 935, it says another state. So what happens is the duty station is where you work and where you need to file your unemployment claim. However, it will be updated by where your agency wants documentation sent to. So you will be fine if even if your duty station says California or something like that. It's just something that updates on our back end to send to the correct place that your agency wants it. So if you see a different state than Colorado, 100% fine.
Thanks, Brandon. Here's a question here from Holly. Are digital signatures acceptable on forms?
Yes, digital signatures would be perfectly fine. Anything that goes to us goes through either your account, so we know it's you. And generally, your signature isn't asked for. Your actual physical signature isn't asked for often, so that would be fine.
Thanks, Brandon. Phil, maybe you can take this one. The question is, if we are an accepted employee who is working but not getting paid, are we ineligible?
This is the one where I give you the answer that you don't like, unfortunately. So if you're an accepted employee and you're working full time and you're not getting paid, unfortunately, you're not considered separated from employment. You don't actually qualify and you wouldn't be eligible for unemployment on a weekly basis. I know that one is difficult to hear at this point in time, but there's also federal guidance that's provided to all the states that reminded each and every state that accepted people who are still working but not getting paid are considered not separated and therefore not eligible and entitled to benefits. Unfortunately, again, I know why you're asking and understand why you're asking. So I'm just the bearer of bad news on that one. Sorry.
Thanks, Phil. Um, we may have touched on this already, but is there a place where claimants can download the ES 935 form to complete and submit on MyUI Plus? Jeff or Brandon?
Yeah, I believe it should be automatically generated for you. It should be if it's not if you didn't receive it in your fact finding area, it will be listed in your correspondences folder in MyUI Plus. So on the left hand navigation under correspondences, the ES 935 should be there.
I'm going to just do a quick time check. We've got about 15 more minutes. If we don't get to everyone's questions, we'll do our best to send out answers to those questions when we distribute the follow-up materials from today's webinar.
We're getting lots of questions about the how to download and how to upload and send in documents. Um, hmm, lots of questions about duty station, which we already
Hey,
covered.
Jessica, one that we're getting a lot is where can you fax documentation to? The fax number for everybody to send those to is 303-318-9014.
Phil, another question here for accepted employees. What happens if you are called in for a single day would you be eligible for benefits for the week in which you worked the 1 day?
Good question. So again, that's going to depend on the circumstances there. So in other words, if you're accepted in somebody who normally works 40 hours a week and now they've got you kind of on an on-call basis, then I would argue that you are partially separated from employment. You would report your hours and earnings in that week in which you worked. Generally, the accepted employees are expected to be working full-time. So if you're accepted but sort of an on-call and normally work full-time, you should still file your unemployment insurance claim and just report hours and earnings.
Thanks,
I'm,
Phil.
I'm going to hit the other question that follows up on that says, if it's a mix of furlough and being accepted, again, I think that would be similar to our last scenario. You're furloughed during the bulk of the week and then you're called in for a period of time. You're partially unemployed. So again, you would only report the hours and earnings. And I only answer that one because I saw it and it's fairly consistent with the last one, Jessica.
Yep, thank you. And we'll go ahead and put that fax number in the chat if we haven't yet already, so everyone can see. And we'll also include that in our follow-up message to everybody who registers. I believe we covered this, but this seems to be coming up a lot. Is there an electronic way to resubmit the ES 935 form and supporting documents?
Yeah, so if you, again, you can fax it to the number that we have there or upload it directly into MyUI Plus, and we will work on getting some instructions that walk you through that step by step. It's better to have a visual with that type of thing. So that is something that we'll work on after this call.
Thanks, Jeff. Another question, Phil, can you re-explain what attached to a position is? That was in our slides, Michelle, but we will cover that again right here. Phil?
Sure. When we say attached, we mean job attached, which means generally the employer has guaranteed work for you to return at the end of the period of the layoff. So if you are a furloughed employee, you are at this point in time considered job attached. You are only out of work as a result of the government shutdown. Anticipated you will return once that shutdown ends. The one thing you don't have that we would ask for is a definite return to work date. So when you're filling out your claim, we're asking you at this point in time just to select a definite return to work date of January 5th, 2026. And attached to the job just means you are not required to seek new employment during that period that you were off and trying to collect benefits.
Thanks, Phil. Looking for a topic we haven't covered, but a lot of repeat questions here. Brandon, is there anything else that you want to reiterate that we haven't covered already?
No, I think we've covered like the big ones. Make sure you have your 935 returned as soon as you can. Another big one we got is what if I didn't say I was job attached? And I think you addressed that earlier, but actually before this meeting, we were talking about a systematic way to upload that and update that for everybody. So it's something we are working on. If you said one, you were laid off to a shutdown and didn't put job attached, or if you put a date such as you thought you would be back by now, we're also working on extending that for anybody that has that on their claim.
I think there are quite a few we haven't gotten to, nor are they answered in the deck. There was one about if someone files their claim and returns to work and the claim closes, what do they need to do if they are unemployed once again in the future? Reopen their claim, and can we discuss how to do that?
Yeah, if your claim is closed, if you go back to work and at some point if they lay you off, You would log back into your account, and on your left-hand navigation, there's an option to reopen your claim. During that reopen, it would ask you if you've been back to work, which you would indicate yes if you had, and go through and indicate that you were laid off again, and that would get your claim going again. And the week following, your weekly certifications would start opening. We would once again need to look with the employer, send something to the agency to confirm their reason for separation. So there is a couple week process on reopens with a new period of employment, but it would be your claim would be there for you.
Thanks, Brandon. Phil, can you go back to the January date that we want them to use for the return to work date?
Yeah, at this point, we've just told people to pick January 5th of 2026 as your definite return to work date at this point in time. I think anyone following the news knows right now, Lord knows how long this shutdown is going to be. So we just wanted to pick a date that we felt is far enough out there so that we're not having people having to update it over and over again.
And there's one on here that's I haven't seen, and it's, do you have to pay interest on any repayments? The answer to that is no. There's no interest on repayments. And when you contact our benefit payment control team, they will work with you on to set up a way to get you a plan to repay if you're not able to pay in full on the first date. We understand that some people may have been they're with the lag in payment for a while. You may need other options, and they will be able to help you with a payment plan that works best for you to get those repayments put in.
Thanks, Jeff. There's a question here. And I just lost it because we're getting new questions. Again, a question from Joyce. She filed her claim over the phone. They put down 30 days because that was the information we had from their agency. Is there a way to change that date? Is the best advice to call back in?
Can you repeat the question, Jessica? Sorry, I was typing.
She filed her claim over the phone and she had put 30 days because that's what her agency told her. Is there a way to change that?
Yeah, we can do that. You can contact our call center and they will be able to modify that date for you. But I don't believe you can do it through self-service on your own.
I
And
can message her privately. Can you
if we message,
let me know who asked that question, Jessica? I'll message her privately.
Mhm. Let's see. Phil, one more time. Accepted employees working full-time without pay are eligible for benefits or no?
Accepted employees working full-time employment without pay are not going to be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits. They're going to be considered not separated from employment. Again, understand the question because you're performing work and not getting paid and you need to figure it out. But federal guidance sent to all 53 jurisdictions reminded all of us very specifically of that you cannot be considered separated for the purposes of unemployment insurance benefits.
Thanks, Phil. And we've got a couple questions about getting to your messages in MyUI Plus. Jeff or Brandon, can you give some tips on where you can find those messages and correspondences in the system?
So, go ahead, Brandon.
Sure. So there's a couple places that you can find correspondences and messages in your system. Important messages, I did see a couple chats on that. Those are right in the middle of your homepage. There's a section right after it says basic information, claim information. Any important messages go there, as well as that's where your weekly certifications will kind of show up right in that section of the page. And as for correspondences, on your left-hand navigation bar, if you click view correspondences, that will bring up everything that you have for any kind of correspondence that we sent you.
Thanks, Brandon. Phil, I know you already mentioned this, but it keeps coming up. How about accepted on call for eligibility?
It's a reasonable question. So again, if you used to work full-time and now you're accepted but on call, that is a partial separation from employment. So therefore, you would be able to file your unemployment insurance claim, but you have to report your hours and earnings each week in which you perform work. Again, you haven't gotten paid yet, but you do have to report your earnings earned during that week. If you were previously on call and you're accepted and now you're still on call, then there's not considered to be a change in your employment relationship and you're not separated from employment. So again, that's going to depend on the unique circumstances of each of those cases.
Thanks, Phil. We will also, if someone from the UI team can drop in the phone number to call for general questions about their claim in the chat to everyone, that would be helpful too. We've gotten a few of those.
Did someone drop the fax number in the chat already? If not, will they please?
Yeah, can we do the fax number and the phone number? That would be great to everyone. And we'll make sure that gets included in our follow-up materials as well. Randy is asking if he needs to attach a cover letter when he faxes his documents.
If you can, please, that would be helpful with your claimant ID on it. However, if you've already sent something and haven't, as long as your claimant ID is on that form, we'll be able to find it.
Brandon and Jeff, we talked about this early on in the call, but can you reiterate what it will look like and what it should look like once they are able to submit requests and certify their weekly payments, since a few folks don't see that option yet?
Yeah, sure. So once your wages are added to your claim, and one easy way to know that is under claim information, you'll actually see dollar figures such as a maximum benefit amount, weekly benefit amount will populate there. And then underneath that, you'll see a thing for weekly certifications that has a button to start certifying. So you would be able to click that button, or also on the left-hand navigation bar, it says request benefit payment. And it's always for the week prior. So anytime Sunday through Saturday of this week, you would have last week there, and so forth.
Thanks, Brandon. We have 3 minutes here, so we can probably squeeze in a few more questions. Phil, David is asking, he's classified as intermittent. If I don't work, I am not paid. I assume that I will not repay as I am not working.
Well, it depends, right? If you're intermittent and you're furloughed and they give you a back pay award, then you would have to repay. Intermittent, I'm assuming you were also intermittent before any kind of furlough. So if that's the case and now you're not working, again, that would only have to repay if you received a back pay award. And that I can't tell you whether the federal government would pay you on that or not, because they don't provide us much information on whether that applies to intermittent employees. Sorry.
Thanks, Phil. Maybe one last question. Do we have to actually apply for jobs, or does looking and searching count?
It's a good question. And in the online, we have a claimant guide, and that is available. That provides a lot of different information on what your responsibilities are, including work search criteria. So we recommend, if you are required to search for work, we recommend that you do 5 work search activities per week. So that could be applying for jobs, that could be working on resume updates. It could be attending training classes to help get reemployed. So I would recommend checking out the claimant guide and looking at the work search activities section to get the full explanation of what counts and what does not.
Thanks, Jeff. Cher, I think we are at time. Do you want to close us out?
Yes, thanks, Jessica. Unfortunately, we are at the top of the hour. However, I believe this will not be the last town hall we'll be holding, which I'm sorry to say that because I wish you would all be able to return to employment. I would just say we really feel for the complexity of the situations that everyone's facing. As we saw today, there are so many nuanced circumstances around whether you're laid off or furloughed or accepted. And so our team is doing the best that we can to help you navigate, as we are also somewhat navigating. We've not been in this situation before at the department, so we do have all hands on deck trying to help you through this uncertain time. A couple of things. We do have previously recorded webinars for federal workers on our website. That was before the shutdown, so shutdown related questions would not be included in those, but lots of other questions came in from federal workers, so be sure to check out those webinars. When we do find a date to hold another webinar, we will share it out broadly and on our website and our socials. Thank you to Phil, Jeff, Jessica, Brandon, Tracy, all of the folks responding to questions. And again, we will be sharing out the recording, the slides, and if we did not get to your questions, we'll do our best to include those in the follow-up as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care and look forward to future communication opportunities from us in the future. Thanks, everyone.